Today on the channel, we're going to take a look at what I consider to be some of the worst haircuts in 80s metal. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something kind of fun. We're going to take a look at what I consider to be some of the worst haircuts in 80s metal. Now granted, there are a lot of bad haircuts in all genres of music, but I think 80s metal had the worst haircuts of all time, in all honesty. And I'm a fan of 80s metal. I love it. I'm going to admit to it. I think it was some of the best music ever and still is. But looking back at the 80s and some of the 80s metal bands, it was pretty embarrassing. So we're going to just take a look at some of the more popular bands. If you delve deeper into the bands that are less popular or never made it, it gets even worse. So at the tail end of this video, I'm going to put a slideshow up of some of the worst pictures I found on the internet of bands from the 80s, and I hope it brings you joy and a little bit of laughter today. So if we can't poke fun at ourselves, you can't poke fun at others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this video off with a picture of myself when I was a senior in high school, and probably got the worst haircut of anybody. So I'm going to show this picture now. So I look like kind of like I can't really commit to growing long hair. I've got the mullet going on and I want to be a rocker, but I wasn't there. So there's my picture. So now that I got that out of the way and I made fun of myself, let's take a look at what I consider the top 10 list of the worst 80s haircuts in metal. All right, so let's kick it off. Here's the top 10 list of what I consider to be the worst haircuts in 80s metal. We're going to start from number 10 and we're going to go down to number 1, which will be the worst of all. So number 10, we're going to take a look at Dizzy Dean Davidson from Britny Fox. All right, so Britny Fox was not a great band. I'm just going to say it. If there's any Britny Fox fans out there, I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but let's take a look at this guy. I mean, he kind of looks like he should be in like the 15 or 1600s. He kind of like has that Mozart thing going on, 1700s haircut, Beethoven. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think what makes it even worse is the wardrobe. And that's going to be a trend also. The hair is terrible, but the wardrobe really adds to it. So there's at least 2 or 3 cans of Aquanet in this guy's hair, and man, the outfit. So Dizzy Dean Davidson, number 10. All right, number 9. Okay, I love Metallica, and I really can't say anything bad about him, but James Hetfield, around the Injustice for All era, I always have thought he looked like the Cowardly Lion, and this haircut just really didn't really do anything for him. So James, I love Metallica, love Hetfield, Kirk. I even like Lars, but I mean, Newstead, that era, awesome. Even Cliff Burton. But James Hetfield, this Cowardly Lion haircut you had going back in the 80s, not a good one, man. Not a good one, dude. All right, number 8, Bon Jovi. It's hard to be in a band with Bon Jovi because Bon Jovi has had the perfect hair. And even through, even now in his career, Bon Jovi's got great hair. But back in the 80s, Bon Jovi had probably some of the best 80s hair. And I could point out Richie Sambora's hair, but we're going to take a look at David Bryan. He was the keyboard player. I mean, this hairdo, it's not his fault. The guy was blessed with hair that looks like straw. But the haircut here and the straw texture of his hair, it looks ridiculous. It's well groomed. I think if they didn't try to make it look so prim and proper and neat, if it was a little more disheveled looking, it'd probably look cooler. But it was just interesting texture. So number 8, David Bryan from Bon Jovi. Number 7, we got to throw CC DeVille on this list. CC DeVille, he's an interesting looking guy. Interesting player. I love Poison. I really dig Poison. I think Poison have some great songs. And I really enjoy their music a lot. But CC DeVille had this hair that was so bleached and so blonde that it looked like if you touched it, it would snap off, and it was brittle, you know, that it was just crispy. In the color and just those hairstyles, not good. DeVille, crazy, crazy hair. All right, moving on, we're going to take a look at Striper. Not trying to offend anybody. I know there's a lot of really passionate Striper fans out there, but Michael Sweet, first of all, the pose that he's doing here in this picture is absolutely ridiculous. But the hair, the wardrobe, the expression on his face, it's just terrible. I've got to say that, you know, Michael Sweet definitely, he almost ranked a little bit higher on this list, but I'm going to place him at number 6. Okay, we're getting down to the top 5. So the next one on the list, we're going to take a look at Randy Piper from Wasp. I mean, just look at this dude. I mean, when I look at this picture, you remember, if anybody has, you know, if anybody that's from the 80s, grew up in the, you know, the 70s or the 80s or early 90s, you remember when your mom would go out and get her hair dyed and she'd get a perm, and she'd come back and she'd have like on all the makeup and try to make herself look really young and really nice. And back then, I guess it looked cool, but this, every time I look at this picture, you know, I'm like, it reminds me of when my mom would go to the salon and get her hair colored, and she'd put on some new makeup, and it was kind of scary, right? But this is Randy Piper from Wasp reminds me of, like, not my mom in particular, but, you know, moms in general, and this haircut. Then the expression on the face, his mouth looks like he's got marbles or some kind of, like he just took a bite out of something that tastes terrible, and he just can't wait to get this picture out of the way so he can spit it out. So not good, man, not good. Anyway, number 4, this probably, some of you probably think Jim Gillette from Nitro deserves to be number 1. But I've got some better haircuts coming up here, or worse. But Jim Gillette, he looks like kind of like a Pomeranian and a chow. I remember when I first moved out of college into my first apartment, the neighbors above me in this apartment had 2 chows, and this haircut reminds me of this one chow, and it's just insane. But Nitro was like that. Everything about Nitro was above and beyond. So it fit their image, and it's pretty impressive in all honesty. I mean, it's pretty darn impressive hair, but it's not impressive in a good way. It's pretty awful. And the color, I mean, it rivals DeVille. At least his hair looks a lot healthier than CeCe's. CeCe's looked extremely, extremely brittle, where Gillette's hair looks like it's got a lot of fluff and puff to it and body, but it's terrible. All right, number 3, we're going to look at Stix from Shotgun Messiah. There's a lot of bad Shotgun Messiah pictures out on the internet, and I mean, I could have picked so many. So I just chose this picture, but man, the hair on Stix, just overall, Shotgun Messiah's probably got some of the worst pictures, like band promo pictures on the internet. I encourage you to look it up if you want to see some more stuff like this. But number 3, I got to give it to Stix. I don't know what else to say about this picture. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I mean, some things you just can't unsee, unfortunately. All right, number 2, one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and a genuinely excellent guy. And I kind of feel guilty putting him on here because Steve Stevens is a wonderful person and a great musician, but man, I don't know what was up with Steve Stevens in the 80s. I mean, there's a few pictures here we're going to show, but it's impressive. It's very impressive. I mean, it's almost kind of like if Edward Scissorhands and Jennifer Batten had a baby, that would be Steve Stevens. And he was a frail human being, and I'm not picking on him. I mean, I wish, wish I had that kind of metabolism, but dude, I mean, his hair and his head is as big as like half of his body. But it's downright embarrassing, these pictures. It's too bad. I mean, the internet lasts forever. he has a lot to be proud of, but not these pictures. All right, number one of all time is Captain Mullet of all time, and that's Joe Elliott from Def Leppard. Joe Elliott was a heartthrob of many a teenage girl back in the 80s. Pour Some Sugar on Me annihilated the universe as well as Hysteria, and this mullet was everywhere, and it is absolutely ridiculous. Looking back at this picture, I don't know how even back then it was considered cool. But the reason I put Joe Elliott on this list was not only because he is contender for worst hair of the 80s hair metal, but throughout the years it kept getting worse. So here's a picture of Joe Elliott today. Not putting the man down. I mean, we all get old, but I mean, Joe Elliott is extremely wealthy, and I don't know what's up with his decision and his stylist, and why no one can tell him that, you know, this is not a good look. I mean, he looks like he should be on the Golden Girls with his haircut. It's rough, man. Anything but the long gray hair. So Captain Mullet, Joe Elliott in the 80s, and still to this day, the reigning champion of bad hair and rock and roll. He reigns supreme. So anyways, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a slideshow and show you some of the best or worst pictures of bands that I found on the internet, so we can all get a chuckle out of it. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. And if I mentioned a band or an artist that you liked, I'm not trying to be mean or poke fun. We're just having a laugh today. So please comment below and consider subscribing. Until next time, peace out.